I mean, this is all about power and control. And do we have the power and control based on, individual liberties, or do we have it based on a deep state that controls everything we think, do, and say? And it's been the latter for a very long time, and there is a glimmer of hope that it's going to shift the other direction. And we'll just have to wait and see how far that goes.
Are you tired of overpaying for your gold, silver, and platinum bullion coins and bars? Then visit sdbullion.com today. SD Bullion was recently named the 177th fastest growing company in the United States by Inc. magazine. This is because they offer the absolute lowest prices in the industry and follow up with over-the-top customer service. So what are you waiting for? Go to sdbullion.com today and join more than 60,000 happy investors that save money on every precious metals purchase they make.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with SilverDoctors.com, and with us today is Eric Dubin, our co-host for our SD Metals and Markets Wrap, and our guest today is the silver guru, David Morgan. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, I'd like to start with you, David. This year has been an interesting year. Probably the biggest story has been Bitcoin. It's been the thing that's risen the most. It rose 1,300% this year. The Dow is up 25%, silver is up 4%, and gold is up 14%. What is the biggest surprise this year for you?
Wow. I'd say probably the amount of interest in the cryptos. I mean, Bitcoin built a pretty nice base, and it really took off, as we all know, and the amount of interest just keeps accelerating. I did a speech early in the year about Bitcoin, and it had just made a huge move, and that was like in February or so. And I spoke about, with the amount of volume that was involved, I saw it going far, far higher. I did not make a prediction as far as how high, but obviously that's held true. I think also one of the other surprises that coincides with the cryptocurrency phenomena is the unsophisticated investors, meaning a lot of people that are in that space don't know how a stock market do not know how a market moves. They don't know anything about equity investing or bond investing or precious metals investing, for that matter, in many cases. And they've never experienced a down market. So it's a lot of neophytes are in this market, which, markets have a way of teaching people great lessons. And I'm afraid that some of these people are already learning lessons by just speculating in areas with probably too much money in these stories only. Certainly, I'm pretty happy about the blockchain methodology. And I think that there is a lot to this whole platform. But just as the internet boom started in 2000 with the .com, or the tech wreck as it's referred to, there were a lot of losers. And things calmed down, settled out, and then there's, of course, some winners, Yahoo, Amazon, several. But a lot of those things went away, never to be heard from again. I think we're similar space, but it surprised me the amount of let's say, pop-up cryptos that came to the fore.
Dave, in your perspective, as somebody who has run a newsletter and has his finger on the pulse of the alternative asset community, particularly precious metals, I'm wondering to what extent you witnessed people getting so frustrated with the precious metal space over this last year, with cryptos flying higher and higher, and even seeing some of that in your own personal business ability to see, with people in the community that you interact with, subscribers, things like that. Have you seen a very significant shift in the way people are looking at precious metals, particularly in the North American market, versus the rise of Bitcoin and all the other cryptos?
I wouldn't say very significant. I'd say somewhat significant. I don't know what the percentage is. I don't know if anyone has the data. Perhaps someone does. But for an example, there's anecdotal stories, and these are from wholesalers and retailers that I know and trust and have known for years. Example: a guy in Canada drives in with his pick-em-up truck with several monster boxes, wholesales them out to this retail dealer friend of mine, and buys Bitcoin. About 6 months later, he drives back cashing out some of his Bitcoin profits and rebuys the monster boxes. And that's not a single story. There's been a lot of that. I think the overall community of silver only or silver crypto investors is frustration. I think a lot of us, and yours truly included, have been very frustrated with the action in the precious metals markets overall for this year, particularly silver, only up 4% year over year. Gold has done better. We at the Morning Report aren't as sad, let's say, as some metals-only investors because of some of the stock picks that we have made that are outside of the gold and silver space that have done, fair, well, some have done extremely well, some have done fair, some have done good. But Dave, and I'm seeing Eric, I think that we need a more mature market in the cryptos. I think we need to see some type of a correction that's meaningful. And at that time, I think reality will set in. And as far as my longer-term perspective, I'm still bullish on the metals. And I've always advocated, and, no matter how many people gripe or troll me, the fact is I've always said it should be part of a position. In other words, part of your total holdings. I have never advocated 100% silver or 100% mining stocks or anything along those lines. 20% is probably good for a real metals head such as myself. Are my personal holdings above that level? And the answer is yes. But it's how I make a living and it's what I specialize in, so I'm comfortable. But am I only metals? And the answer is absolutely not. I have things that are outside of the equity market, the bond market. I have, real estate, not a lot, but it's paid for cash flows and other items. So I'll probably over-answer the question, but frustration, I think, would be the one word I would pick for metals investors, particularly silver, for the entire year.
Regarding the mining stocks, what is your perspective on this year's action in the gold and silver mining stocks, David?
I think they performed relatively well. I mean, I can only look at my own work, really. I mean, look at others, of course. But, there's been a lot of what I call the mainstream gold newsletters, which are, penny, 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 story, story, story. Most of them are meaningless. There's one that puts out like a pick every week or every month, and you have to pay, $1,500 or something, a $50 maintenance fee, which is what we could charge for our whole service. But regardless, I looked at some of their picks. In fact, one of my analysts sent me a little email, showed me about 4 of the picks that they'd made that were 10 baggers, and all of them are down like 60, 70%. You got to be really careful in this space. I've always taught bet a little to win a lot. We have certainly been bit in the speculative space, but I recommend such a small portion of your funds in the Morgan Report to go in the speculation side. If you follow what I teach, you really can't get hurt. And so our top tier and mid tier stuff have done pretty well. I mean, we were on the zinc story early. I didn't believe the copper story early enough, although obviously I never argue with the market. Copper's been very well. And so we looked through the sector. I mean, vanadium is a story that nobody knows. We got that out to our subscribers. So overall, on balance, I would put our stock picks, if you weighted it as we advocate, as we suggest, as we teach, then you would probably be pretty happy with the portfolio of the resource stocks. Again, the Morgan Report goes into basically everything that is in oil and gas. And one speculation that we have has been probably one of the best ever. It's up about 500 or 600% right now. And it's got a long, long ways to go. There's only one other analyst that's written about it at all. No one else really knows about it. And this is such a breakthrough technology that will have to be acknowledged by other people in the industry at some point. And once that point is reached, hopefully I'll be able to gather as many people that are serious investors as I possibly can to help them out, because this is one of those game changers. It's significant because it changes the way that the electronic waste industry will be utilized from this point forward, and also in the mining sector as well, because it uses a reagent that is inert. And this is huge because there's areas of the United States and countries outside of the United States that prohibit the use of cyanide. And this is a cyanide replacement that basically is EPA friendly. And I use EPA in quotation marks because it's EPA friendly worldwide.
You've covered this a bit in your newsletter. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, I've hinted at it on the Twitters and whatever, and I've spoken about it. I've actually given out the stock a few times in public forums, and to being a nice guy, but I don't like to give this stuff away for free. I mean, it's an interesting business, and I'm going to whine a bit. I'll try to make it succinct and not too much time, but I never get a house painter out here to paint half my house and then say, hey, I don't like your work, leave me alone, I mean, people want something. It took me 2 years to research this company before I wrote word one about it. And then I do have my members that do pay me, and of course I give them our research. And now someone just walks up at a trade show booth and wants to know for free, what I spent all this money. I took both the analysts down there. I mean, people have a misconception about this industry at times. And so, you get what you pay for. I mean, do I get it right all the time? No, but this one's big. And I got a recent email because with the paid service, you get to write 2 questions a month to us, and I guarantee an answer. And he said, well, you're going to add to your position. And I said, in rare cases where we have a situation where the company changes, I will add, because it's a new company. And that's the case with this one. There's a multi-billion-dollar company that's basically become, I don't want to use the word partner, but close to a partnership agreement using this reagent. And there's several pilot plants that will be built out in 2018. And once those are built, then it'll be a new company. So I told my people, I've already upped the buy limit once. I may do it one more time, but the whole idea of getting these type of situations is to get in relatively early. You don't have to get at the very, very bottom, but you want to be patient enough to let this thing mature. My only fear is that I'll be bought out by this big multi-billion-dollar company, but the way they're responding to the technology right now is they're very happy with us having the patent pending on it, and don't seem to be anxious to do anything to disrupt the flow that we already have.
Well, that sounds interesting. Well, at any given time, if you ever wanted to talk more about that and come on the show, we'd be happy to give you a forum for it, because I am familiar with the company you're talking about, and their technology is interesting, so it would definitely be cool to dive into that and see how that could impact the supply of precious metals on a going forward basis, because that would be what would be most relevant for our audience. So, that you consider the invitation extended anytime you'd like to talk about it.
Okay, great. So. Yeah, thank you.
Now, moving on here, where do you see gold and silver then heading in 2018? I know, Eric and you were talking about before how 2017 has really been frustrating for a lot of people in the metals markets, and some people are, ditching metals and going for Bitcoin. What do you think the sentiment will be in 2018?
I think it'll be shifting somewhat. I think somewhere in the year there'll be some type of crypto problem. I don't know what it is, but it's easy to forecast, or fairly easy to forecast, that there could be government intervention, double checking the identity of people that are in that space. I don't know. I don't want to put out too much speculation, but I think something will happen along the lines that will pause a lot of people that, again, are neophytes in investing overall, that will cause them to maybe rethink what is a prudent investment in that arena. But we'll see. As far as gold and silver, I'm going to just talk gold. Remember that gold and silver are 85% correlated. I will mention silver, but whatever I say about gold applies to silver. So if you go back and you look at the end of 2015, we had the low. And I called that low for public forums like this after I'd made the call for my subscribers. And then we saw this great rally in 2016, all the way into late summer. I called that top. So for our trading positions, we took them off. And this is where I'm very proud of, what I do or we do. Certainly there's 5 of us. I have to, families depend on, this business. But regardless of that, First Majestic was one of my favorite trades, and that went from $2.50 to $18. That'd be like silver going from like the $15, 14 and change bottom of 2016 in December. I know I'm talking 2 years ago, up to like $100. I mean, that was like a 700% gain if my brain's working. So, that's the kind of leverage you get in some of these companies. And so I made an article that got nothing but trolled that talked about, did you cash out at $50 silver in 2016? Meaning that if you got the right equities, you could get those kind of, percentage gains. Anyway, moving onward. So let's look at that. The bottom in gold is there so far. Nothing's been lower. So if you go into 2017, and we're at the end of that year, and you look at December, January, we were at about 1130-ish. And then the next low was somewhere around the March timeframe, about 1200. And the next low was about that same area, slightly higher, about midsummer. And then the next low is behind us, and that was about 1240 and in this winter, in the November timeframe, just a few weeks back. So this tells me, without totally objectively, that we keep having a higher low each time, which means we're still in a bull market from that washout bottom, which means I expect that trend to continue. I expect to see 2018 to be a better year. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. Price-wise, as far as percentage-wise, we had a 14% gain, I think you said, Elijah. I expect a little better than that in 2018, but not significantly better. I think it could see 20-25%. And once gold gets above the 1350 level and maintains it, then the market will be telling me, I'll be telling the market a darn thing, that we're finally making the next significant move up in gold. And when that happens, silver will probably not be leading this time. I fully expect gold will have to make the move first. But once it does, once it gets to 1350, then, and maintains it, of course, then we'll see silver play catch up. I think silver will catch up to gold somewhat in the normal rally the first of the year. I don't want to contradict myself, but silver is so washed out and oversold that you may see the gold-silver ratio narrow in the first 3 months of the new year. But then if we don't get any significant move from that point forward, you'll probably see the ratio spread again. But gold's the leader this time around. There's no doubt in my mind, unless there's some huge breakthrough in the silver market that I'm not aware of, and it's possible, of course. So that's how I see it. I think it'll be a good year. I'm looking at this will be a year, 2018 will be a year where people are going to have to get reconciled with a lot of changes, especially in the political world. My friend Bill Holter keeps talking about the truth bombs, and there are a lot of them out there. And there's a huge shift in sentiment about what's taking place in the deep state and the kind of shenanigans that have gone on that are harmful to the population at large, humanity at large, globally. And it's an embarrassment in a way for me as an American to try to, I can't be proud, of what we have done collectively as a country. Certainly not me or you or anyone on this podcast probably. But, as the leadership has gone in and basically mandated their will over other countries, carte blanche, in the quote-unquote banner of freedom or democracy, is extremely upsetting to someone that has an objective point of view. And I think this is going to start to shift, and that we are going to see so many things questioned about everything, not just about the financial system, but and the political system, but so many things. And most of what I call the awake community, the truther community, there's a lot of references to that, I think will start to gain traction. We've already seen that this year in 2017, where the mainstream press is actually not taken as seriously as it was, let's say, 2 years ago. That trend will continue to accelerate, in my view.
You've said so much, David, and I agree with a lot of your outlook on the year ahead and all of the political changes and whatnot that are going to be catalysts in our sector.
Now, David, I was interested in getting your perspective, on this political change I guess you see occurring. How do you think, the average person can kind of, maybe take part in this? Because you're saying that really we're going to see the rise of the independent media more than we have this year?
Yes. Well, I could go on for hours, and it's not my forte, although I am quite studied in it, believe it or not. But, I mean, if you go back to the foundation, what you've got is you've got the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch. And the judicial branch was totally conceived to be totally independent. So if there's something at law that was wrong with the political system, the judicial branch could take care of it because they were the ruler of law. The problem is that's been so distorted and twisted politically. The politicians got in there, and I don't have the quote from Jefferson at my fingertips, but basically he stated that if, the judicial branch ever got corrupted, look out, and that's what the case has been for quite some time. So to expand on that, I do believe that you're going to see that part of the government take care of business more so than has been done over the last couple of decades. And when some of these things are unwound and some of the laws that have been broken are brought to the fore, where the basic citizenry understands that, one, this person, this entity, this nation state broke this law and there's a repercussion for it. I mean, this is going to be huge because we've been going along in this mire for so long. We've gone into this, I'll use the metaphor, swamp. We can't see clearly through the water. It's so murky. And now that's starting to clear up. So some of this may be wishful thinking. I've always been an idealist. But what I have seen so far from some of these outlets that are in the alternative media that have a pretty good track record at forecasting and showing what's going on behind the scenes have indicated that there is a right and wrong, and there is a price to pay, and that judges can be as corrupt as any politician, and that the Congress critters can be as corrupt as anybody, and that there is a chance that this could start to be cleared up. I really was so cynical, and still am somewhat cynical, that anything could be done against the deep state, that I just basically yawned over it. But I always try to remain open-minded, and I'm a very much show me, don't tell me kind of a person. And I'm saying this now, not a lot has been shown, but enough has been that I'm optimistic that if we can get the judicial branch back in order and really go by the rule of law and do what the intent is, that no one's above the law and that there's a price to pay for everything in life, this will have a great, great impact. And unfortunately, the repercussions could be negative for those that are innocent. And what I mean by that is there could be disruptions because of the power that is in the dark side. And so for a quick metaphor, perhaps, would be, let's say, a transportation industry that's been corrupt for a long time decides that, they're going to have to face the music, so to speak. And so the transportation network breaks down to one of the major food chains, okay? I'm just making this off the top of my head, but all I want to do is prepare you. Get asked the question, I'll give you the answer. And so this could disrupt, let's say, foodstuffs in a major supermarket, and it would hurt the innocent. It had nothing to do with it. But this is the kind of unintended consequences that can happen when you have a big shakeout like I see coming over the next year.
When it comes to new media, the consent of the governed is what the powers that be most are concerned about. And, the birth of the World Wide Web came in 1993, and ever since then we've seen the expansion of alternative media in fits and starts, but more and more people today derive their understanding of the world from alternative media versus the lamestream media. That's going to continue as a major trend in the coming year. And when we face the social turmoil that can come from a general equities market, downturn and possibly even outright crash with interest rates rising, political turmoil domestically, on the rise as the frictions with the Democrats and Trumps continue, and geopolitical pressures. I mean, we have a lot that's going to come in the next year that's going to bring to the forefront a lot of turmoil in financial markets and create an even greater bid for precious metals and assets that are all outside of mainstream. So it's going to be an exciting year, and alternative media is a great place to be. We're going to look forward to covering that in the year ahead at Silver Doctors. So toss it back to Elijah, and any other thoughts you may have, David. That'd be great to wrap up and see what you think.
Definitely. And I mean, one of the big drivers, it seems like Trump has really driven a lot of this about saying that the mainstream media, he's calling the mainstream media fake news, and kind of the whole rise of Trump really got a lot of people thinking in a different way. I guess, what is your perspective on that, David? Do you think a lot of this is due to Trump's campaign and then his first year as president?
I do. I mean, he actually, as you said, used the word fake news, and he's so good at baiting these people. I mean, he sets them up and they don't even know it. And then he kind of like snaps their head off in a way, as a metaphor. We want to do a head snap. Sorry. But no, this is what's taken place. And so a lot of people in the mainstream don't know what to do. So they're trying to like regulate the internet further, that, this is fake news and that's fake news. And that has a backlash because most of the truthers know what's real and what isn't, and so they say no, that's not true. So it's a war for the truth. I mean, I've not taken every one of my podcasts and ended with a statement, but I try to do it every other time or whatever, that there's nothing more powerful than the truth, and this is a fact. And there's been a very big lack of it for a very long time, not only in the monetary system, but in the political system and just about anything you want to talk about. So I'm not a big Trump guy. I said, I don't care what he says, show me. But he's actually shown quite a bit. I can't think of anybody that's taken on the mainstream press and shown, if you're objective, that they basically, especially a certain channel, they'll just make stuff up. Totally make stuff up and pass it off as legitimate reporting. I mean, this is ridiculous. But this is what goes on in the present day. And as I said earlier, just to reiterate a bit, as Bill Holter says, the truth bombs, I think there's going to be a lot of shifts but in power. I mean, this is all about power and control. And do we have the power and control based on, individual liberties? Or do we have it based on a deep state that controls everything we think, do, and say? And it's been the latter for a very long time, and there is a glimmer of hope that it's going to shift the other direction. And we'll just have to wait and see how far that goes.
All right. Well, David Morgan, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers any last thoughts you had and where they can find you online?
Yeah, a couple things. One is I do a podcast every week called The Weekly Perspective, and other interviews that I'm allowed to use jointly. In other words, on your channel at Silver Doctors, and then also use it on the podcast to do that. It's good to get on the free email list. It's free. The other thing is look at the blog. I don't blog every day, but usually once a week there's something worth going to. And I'm probably going to revamp the Silver Investor website, my old domain, and I'm going to try to do some RSS feeds and take on maybe 10 sites that I know and trust, such as Silver Doctors, and just let them feed us the news, so that site will be more just precious metals oriented, where the Morgan Report is more equity based, financial investing situation. So I'm going to do that. That's about all I've got. Certainly doesn't cost anything to get on the free list. And the podcast is me for about 10 to 15 minutes maximum, and I always end with some comment about the precious metal.
All right, Eric Dubin, thank you so much for co-hosting with us today. Are there any last thoughts you'd like to add?
We'll cover 2018 as it unfolds, and the next week or so will be very telling as well. When we were speaking with Dave Kranzler 2 weeks ago, we nailed the bottom. We called the exact bottom on when it turned this month, and that actually is not very hard to do. That pattern has been with us for 3 years now running. Dave Morgan nailed the same pattern. He and I have talked about it in real time on previous shows as well, too. The harder part is figuring out what happens after, we get this sell-off into December and then come out in January. And Dave's work this last year, advising caution and calling the top in the summer was spot on. And that's, to me, very, very impressive. His work as a timer is great. People have expectations about forecasters that are unrealistic. Being a professional forecaster is never about trying to get the exact dates or the exact magnitude moves on exact market timings correct, but just to be able to understand generically what's going on in markets. And I think Dave has got his finger on the markets very well. He deserves the moniker of Silver Guru because he's been in the market for a very long time, and I've learned a lot from Dave over the years. So I highly recommend people check out his work and check out his website.
Thank you.
And we're going to see a lot of turmoil in this coming year. You know, this January is probably not going to be as clean of an up move as we've seen in other years. Even the last year, we saw January come with fits and starts and a big sell-off in the middle of the year, or middle of the month, rather. And so, you know, people should expect a lot of volatility in precious metals, but jettisoning one's insurance exposure to the sector is not a wise thing. And a lot of times people get really excited and they overexpose themselves to the sector, and then when we have downturns or long periods where the cartel and other forces keep the sector down, people lose faith. And I'd encourage people to not lose faith when it comes to this upcoming year, because insurance is going to be more valuable than ever. We got a lot of turmoil coming, and precious metals are one of the best ways to hedge against that kind of turmoil.
All right. Well, this has been Elijah Johnson, Eric Dubin, and our guest David Morgan on the SD Metals and Markets year-end wrap. Merry Christmas to everyone, and we'll see you in the new year.